The story of Auntie Grace and Alex began on a chilly autumn afternoon in a quiet Oregon neighborhood, where the air smelled like pine trees and freshly fallen leaves. Grace had always been the kind of woman people trusted instantly. She was in her late 40s, warm-eyed, gentle-voiced, with a calm presence that made children run to her porch and adults smile whenever she waved. Most people called her Auntie Grace because she made everyone feel like family, not because of any blood connection. She baked for neighbors, helped new mothers, looked after stray cats, and offered advice to anyone who needed comfort. But underneath that kindness, she carried a tired sadness she rarely showed. A quiet ache she hid behind polite smiles. Alex, 28, hard-working and soft-spoken, had recently moved into the neighborhood. He admired Grace's kindness from the start. She checked on him when he was new, brought him lemon bread, and told him which days the garbage truck actually came. Over time they developed a natural friendship, the kind that needed no explanation, just simple understanding and small acts of care. On that particular afternoon, Alex was returning from the store with a bag of groceries when he noticed Grace struggling with her porch steps. She lifted her right arm to hold the railing and pain flashed across her face. She tried to hide it quickly, but Alex saw it. "Auntie Grace, are you okay?" he asked, stepping forward. His voice was full of concern, clean and honest. She forced a smile. "Oh sweetheart, I'm fine, it's just this shoulder acting up again," she said, touching the spot gently with a wince. Alex placed the bag down. "That looks painful, have you seen someone about it?" She shook her head. "Doctors are expensive and it's not that serious, I've lived with it for months." Her words hit him sharply. Grace helped everyone but never let anyone help her. She carried the world like it belonged to her alone. "I learned deep tissue massage in my physical therapy classes," Alex said softly. "It might help with the stiffness if you want, I can try." Grace blinked in surprise, the worry lines on her forehead softening. "You know how to do that?" He nodded. "Yeah, it's safe, it's nothing weird, just pressure and muscle release." She hesitated, her pride trying to say no, but the pain in her shoulder finally spoke louder. "All right, sweetheart, thank you, that's very thoughtful." Inside her living room, the fireplace glowed gently even. Though it wasn't lit, she kept the room warm with thick blankets draped everywhere and old books stacked on tables. It was a cozy space, and Alex always felt strangely at home there. Grace sat down carefully, rolling her shoulder. "This thing has been bothering me since summer," she admitted. "I guess I ignored it too long." Alex smiled kindly. "It happens, let me see where the tension is." As soon as his hands pressed lightly against her shoulder blade, she gasped, not from discomfort, but from relief. Her muscles were tight like coiled rope, and she had been carrying that tension for months without telling anyone. "You're really tense here," Alex said gently. She laughed softly. "I'm tense everywhere, sweetheart." He applied slow, steady pressure, using the training he remembered. He was careful, respectful, focused only on relieving her pain. He worked with confidence but also a tenderness that surprised even him. The room became quiet except for the soft sound of her breathing. She relaxed more than he had ever seen. After a minute she whispered almost brokenly, "Sometimes I forget what it feels like to be taken care of." The words sank deep into him. He paused, his hand still resting against her shoulder. He didn't know what to say at first, because the pain carried in that single sentence felt heavy and old. Grace cleared her throat as if embarrassed. "I didn't mean to say that out loud." "You're allowed to feel tired," Alex said quietly. "You always help everyone. Someone should help you too." Her voice trembled. "It's been a long time since someone did." She didn't elaborate, but she didn't need to. Alex knew pieces of her story. She had once been married to a man named Mark, a man who left when she needed him most. She rarely spoke about him, and when she did, her voice held a softness that sounded like bruised memories. As Alex continued the massage, he felt her body slowly loosen under his hands. Her breathing evened out, her shoulders softened, and the lines around her eyes faded. It was like watching someone finally put down a weight they had carried alone for too long. "I'm sorry you've been hurting," Alex said in a gentle voice. "You deserve better than silent pain." She didn't respond at first, just closed her eyes and let warmth spread across her face. She trusted him, not because he offered help, but because he offered understanding without making her feel weak. Minutes passed, and the room glowed with that peaceful hush that only appears when two people feel safe around each other. It wasn't romantic, not dramatic, just deeply human. Then suddenly Grace inhaled sharply and sat up too quickly, pulling away from Alex's hands. His heart jumped. "Grace, did I hurt you?" "No," she whispered, staring at the wall as if a memory had slammed into her. "I just remembered something I haven't thought about in years." Her voice cracked slightly. Alex leaned closer. What happened? But she shook her head, struggling to steady her breathing. I'm okay, sweetheart, it just surprised me. Her hands trembled faintly, and Alex could see her fighting with emotion she didn't want to release. He wanted to ask again, but he respected her silence. Grace lifted her gaze slowly, meeting his eyes. Her expression was soft but shaken. You have a very kind heart, Alex, more kind than you know. He felt warmth rise in his chest, not attraction, but a protective ache, the kind you feel when you want someone to finally find peace after years of standing strong for everyone else. She reached for the glass of water on her table and took a slow sip, trying to ground herself. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier but still fragile. Thank you for helping me today. I didn't realize how much I needed this, how much I needed someone to simply notice. Alex nodded. You don't have to be strong all the time. Her eyes softened. Maybe not, but old habits don't break easily. For a moment they sat in silence, not uncomfortable, but meaningful, the kind of silence that happens when hearts speak louder than words. Then a sudden knock at the front door broke the stillness, sharp and unexpected. Grace stiffened instantly, her face shifting from soft vulnerability to tense alertness. That's strange, she whispered. No one comes by unannounced. Alex stood up. Do you want me to check? But she raised a hand quickly. No, I know who it might be. Her voice dropped to a trembling sadness. Someone I haven't seen in years. Before Alex could ask more, the knock came again, slower, heavier, almost familiar. Grace swallowed hard, stood, and walked toward the door like someone stepping toward a forgotten piece of their past. Alex watched, his heartbeat steady but curious, sensing something important was about to happen, something Grace had not prepared herself for. And as her hand touched the doorknob, the air in the room tightened, holding its breath. When the door cracked open, a low voice spoke her name with quiet regret. Grace? The sound of that voice made her freeze, her breath halting, her eyes widening with recognition and disbelief. And Alex realized the past she had tried to bury had just stepped back into her living room. Grace stood frozen at the door, her hand still on the knob, staring at the man she once promised her whole future to. Mark stood there with tired eyes and a weathered face, holding his breath like he wasn't sure if she would slam the door or let him speak. Alex stepped back, respectfully, sensing the weight of the moment. The calm living room felt suddenly too small, like the past had pushed its way inside without permission. Grace's voice came out steady but soft. Why are you here, Mark? He lowered his gaze. I needed to talk to you. I know I should have come long before this. Grace opened the door wider but did not move out of the way. She did not smile, did not frown, just looked at him with a quiet strength she had earned the hard way. Mark stepped inside slowly, like entering a place he no longer had a right to walk into. Alex stayed near the kitchen doorway, not wanting to intrude but ready to leave if Grace needed space. Mark glanced at Alex, offering a quick nod. I'm sorry to interrupt. I didn't know you had company. Grace answered before Alex could. He's a friend. He was helping me with my shoulder. That's all. Something in her tone made Mark swallow hard. He had no right to question anything, and he knew it. Grace walked to the couch and sat down, her hands folding together tightly. Mark stood across from her for a moment, uncertain, then slowly took the chair opposite her. The chair he once sat in every evening when life was simple and she trusted him completely. Alex turned slightly away but remained close enough in case Grace needed him. He didn't listen to every word, but he felt the tension like a heavy breath in the air. Mark finally spoke. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the kind I rehearsed 100 times. The real truth. Grace's voice stayed calm. Then say it. He wiped a hand across his jaw. I left because I was scared. I convinced myself I wasn't good enough for you. Every time I saw you working hard, taking care of everyone, loving this neighborhood like it was your own family, I felt like I wasn't doing enough. I was ashamed. Instead of fixing myself, I ran. Grace looked at him without blinking. You didn't just run, Mark. You disappeared. You left me to pick up everything, including myself. He nodded quickly. I know. And I've lived with that guilt every day. I hurt you in ways I can't undo. But when I heard from an old neighbor that your shoulder was giving you trouble, I realized I didn't even know basic things about your life anymore. I realized how far I had drifted from the person I should have been. Grace exhaled slowly. My shoulder is the least of it. Mark looked like he wanted to reach for her but didn't dare. I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here because I had to face you. I had to tell you how sorry I am for not choosing you when you needed me the most. Grace's eyes glimmered, but she kept her composure. I waited for answers for a long time. Years. I cried in this living room. I blamed myself. I thought maybe I wasn't enough. But eventually I realized it wasn't about me. It was about the things inside you that you never wanted to face. Mark nodded, humbled. You're right. And I'm finally facing them. I should have come sooner. The silence that followed was thick but not angry. Just heavy with emotions that had waited far longer than they should have. Alex watched quietly. He felt protective of Grace but also understood this moment wasn't his to interrupt. He knew she needed closure. He could feel it in the way she sat straight-backed, strong. No longer the woman who had crumbled years ago when the man she loved walked away. Grace finally leaned forward. Mark, what do you want from me now? He took a shaky breath. Not another chance. I don't deserve that. I don't expect that. I just want you to know that leaving you was the worst mistake of my life. I want you to know you didn't deserve that pain. You were good to me. Better than I ever was to you. Grace's expression softened slightly, but she remained guarded. I don't hate you, Mark. I never did. I was hurt. Deeply. But I built a life without you. A quiet life. A strong one. I learned to take care of myself. Mark blinked fast, fighting emotion. I can see that. And I'm proud of you. I just wish I had been strong enough to stay. Grace looked down at her hands, then toward Alex briefly. She knew Alex had heard enough to understand the roots of her sadness, the pieces she never put into words before. She drew strength from knowing she didn't have to hide anymore. She lifted her chin. I'm not the same woman you left behind. Mark nodded again, understanding. Would you let me make it right in some way? Not romantically. Just by being honest. By giving you the closure you deserved years ago. Grace thought about it. She didn't know him anything. But she knew that letting him speak wouldn't harm her. She wasn't fragile anymore. Talk, she said softly. So he did. He talked about the guilt he carried, the therapy he finally attended, the regrets that chased him, the loneliness he felt after leaving, and the realization that running from someone who loved him only led him into a colder life. Grace listened not because she needed his apology to heal, but because she needed to understand her past from the other side. At one point Mark's voice cracked. You gave me everything, Grace. All I gave you was an empty house and a goodbye you didn't deserve. She looked at him with quiet compassion, older, wiser, steadier than when he left. You're right. I deserved better. Mark lowered his head, accepting her truth. When he finally stopped talking, Grace took a deep breath. I forgive you, Mark. Not because I want you back, but because I want peace. That single sentence seemed to break something open in Mark. His shoulders collapsed, relief washing over him like a tide that had waited years to reach the shore. Thank you, he whispered. That means more than you know. Grace stood, signaling the conversation was ending. Mark understood and rose to his feet. I won't bother you again, he said softly. But I hope your life is filled with people who see your worth. You deserve that. Grace gave him a small nod. Take care, Mark. He walked to the door, paused once, then stepped out of her home and back into the world he had abandoned years ago. The door closed gently behind him. Grace's breath trembled, and she pressed her hand against her chest. The moment had drained her, but it also freed her. She had faced the ghost of her past and walked out stronger. Alex approached slowly. Are you all right? Grace turned to him, her eyes warm and shining, not from sadness but from release. I'm more than all right, sweetheart. I finally let go of something I've been holding for too long. She sank onto the couch, exhausted but peaceful. Alex sat across from her, giving her space while still being close enough to support her. She looked at him with deep gratitude. You being here today. I don't think that was an accident, she whispered. Alex smiled softly. I'm glad I could help. Grace leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment as the weight lifted from her shoulders. Not just the physical tension, but years of emotional strain. For the first time in a long time she felt ready to rebuild. Ready to embrace the people who truly cared. Ready to breathe freely again. And Alex, watching her find that strength, realized this connection between them was something rare. Something that wasn't defined by age or obligation, but by genuine kindness and trust. The moment felt calm, hopeful, and full of new beginnings. Grace sat quietly on the couch after Mark left, feeling a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. The room was still, almost too quiet, and she tried to gather her thoughts. She had waited years for that conversation. Years to hear the truth from the man who once promised her everything and then walked away. Now that the moment had finally passed, her heart felt lighter, but her body felt drained, like she had run a long emotional marathon she never signed up for. She looked toward Alex, who stood nearby with a calm worry in his expression, unsure if she needed comfort or space. "Grace," he asked softly, "do you want some water?" She nodded, grateful for the simple offer. He moved quickly to the kitchen and returned with a glass, placing it gently in her hands. The warmth in his eyes made her chest tighten, not in a painful way, but in a way that reminded her she wasn't alone anymore. She sipped slowly, letting the cool water settle her nerves. "Thank you," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. Alex sat on the chair across from her, not too close, not too far. "You handled that with so much strength," he said. "Most people would have broken down." Grace gave a faint laugh. "I broke down years ago. I'm just rebuilding now." He nodded, understanding. She looked at him for a long moment, studying the gentleness in his face. He had come into her home expecting to drop off groceries, but he had ended up witnessing one of the hardest confrontations of her life. Yet he never pushed, never asked for details, never judged. He had simply stayed. "A lot came back to me when he walked through that door," Grace said quietly. "Memories I buried, memories I never wanted to see again." Alex leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to talk about it unless you want to." Grace took a deep breath. "It's strange. Sometimes you think you've healed, and then a familiar voice opens every door you closed." She placed a hand on her chest. "But this time something was different. I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel desperate for answers. I felt steady." Alex gave a warm, proud smile. "Because you've grown stronger. You built a new life." She looked down at her hands. "I did. Slowly. Quietly. And today made me see that I'm not the same woman he left behind." A soft silence filled the room, but it wasn't heavy. It was peaceful, like the air was settling after a long storm. Grace looked out the window at the cloudy sky, watching leaves drift down the street. "I think I needed today," she admitted. "Even if it hurt." Alex nodded. "Sometimes closure doesn't tie things neatly. It just lets you breathe again." His words struck her deeply, and she felt something shift inside her. Something gentle, something hopeful. For years she had lived with a tightness in her chest, a quiet ache she couldn't explain. Now, for the first time, it felt like the weight had finally lifted. "You're good with words," Grace said softly. "Only when it matters." Grace leaned back, feeling more grounded. "Alex, can I ask you something?" "Anything. Why were you so kind to me today? You barely know me." He hesitated, thinking carefully. "Because you've been kind to everyone. Because you care about people without expecting anything back. And because I could see you were hurting." Grace blinked, touched by the sincerity in his voice. "You remind me of the person I used to be," she said. "Open-hearted. Hopeful." "You still are," he replied. "You just needed space to remember." Her eyes softened. She hadn't expected someone younger, someone new to her life, to understand her so deeply. But Alex didn't treat her like a woman broken by the past. He treated her like someone who mattered, someone worth helping. She placed the empty glass on the table. "I don't know what happens next," she admitted. Alex shrugged gently. "You live your life. You take care of yourself. You heal. And you let people be there for you when you need them." Grace looked at him with a kind of gratitude that had no words. She felt safe with him, not in a romantic way, but in a way that made her believe she could trust someone again. She stood slowly, stretching her shoulder. The pain that had haunted her for months had eased drastically, thanks to his help earlier. She rolled her arm and smiled when she felt the difference. "You helped more than my shoulder today," she said. "You helped my heart breathe again." Alex felt a small lump in his throat. "I'm glad I could." Grace walked to the window and watched a pair of neighbors walking their dog. Life outside continued like nothing had happened inside her home. But she had changed. She felt lighter, clearer. She turned to Alex. You know, she said thoughtfully, I spent so long trying to fix things alone. I forgot how good it feels to let someone help. He stood beside her. You don't have to isolate yourself anymore. She looked at him with a gentle smile. Maybe I don't. Another silence passed between them, but this one was filled with warmth. Alex began gathering his things, sensing she might need rest. I should head home, he said softly. You've had a long day. Grace hesitated, then touched his arm lightly. Thank you for staying. You being here made this easier. Anytime, he said. He moved toward the door, but Grace stopped him with a quiet voice. Alex. He turned. Yes. She smiled, a peaceful, real smile that had been missing from her face for years. You're a good man. Don't let the world make you forget that. Her words stunned him for a moment. He nodded, touched. And you're stronger than you think. She gave a soft laugh. Maybe we're both learning something today. He opened the door and stepped outside, promising he would check on her tomorrow. Grace closed the door behind him and leaned against it, feeling the quiet of her home in a completely new way. It wasn't lonely anymore. It was peaceful. It was hers. She walked to the couch and sat down, letting everything settle. She thought about Mark, about her past, about the pain she finally let go of. But most of all, she thought about Alex, the unexpected kindness he brought into her life, the steady presence he offered without asking for anything in return. She realized something important. Healing didn't always come from grand moments. Sometimes it came from simple kindness, from someone willing to sit with you in your hardest moments, from a warm voice reminding you that you deserved good things too. A gentle smile rested on her face. The future no longer felt like a burden. It felt open. She whispered to the empty room. I think I'm ready now. Ready to live. Ready to heal. Ready to grow. Ready to let light into the spaces she once kept closed. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees as if echoing her new beginning. Grace stood, stretching her shoulders one more time. The tension was gone. The pain had eased. And for the first time in years she felt whole. As she turned off the lamp and walked toward the hallway, one simple thought warmed her heart. This was not the end of her story. It was the start of a new chapter, one she would walk into with strength, clarity, and hope. And she knew she wouldn't be walking alone.